Hello again. I'm very happy to actually be here today and join you in such an amazing day as we were saying, and also a very good day for science. My name is Mihaela Ghidersa. I'm a software developer at Centric Romania, and besides my deep interest for software and technology in general, I like to research and prepare content that I gather from my experiences or maybe from the experience of the ones near me for cool events like this one today. So again, thank you to the organizers for having me. I feel honored to be part of such an amazing lineup of speakers. When I'm not speaking or coding whatsoever, I'm passionate about everything that it's related to outdoors and sport, but also I like reading, some blogging maybe sometimes, just when I feel, again, the need to share something. First of all, I gotta say that this time I'm not here to turn your world upside down with technical concepts or give you a perspective on the best architecture approach. I think that sometimes this can be a pretty toxic trait we have in software development, thinking that it's always about the technical knowledge. But no, today I'll be a bit against it maybe, because when we discuss this sort of decisional impact, we need to think a bit beyond. We need to challenge our beliefs about team dynamics and roles, and maybe quit being so emotionally attached to our roles, positioning levels, the never-ending processes, you know. So I'm not an architect yet, but my experiences showed me some successful ingredients that can make things move around and really work. So this is what I want to talk about today. This is also a topic of which I'm interested in knowing your opinion about. So at the end of the session, maybe we can discuss more and exchange information. Beyond actually delivering a presentation, I'm here to contribute to creating better teams and better products. So let's just go through it and start with something that maybe is the best question when it comes to this topic. Okay, what exactly is architecture? Because when it comes to clearly defining what software architecture really is, I found many interpretations from a lot of sources, and some of them very confusing and hard to tackle. All of them seem pretty abstract and ambiguous for a software developer, especially for one that it's in the beginning of its career. And I also took a sneak peek maybe in the buildings architecture domain, because if you are like me and can resist the curiosity of maybe comparing and seeing other perspectives, well, I found out this beautiful definition that architecture is a technical solution that makes one or more technical solutions that make artistic, in our case, maybe more abstract concepts, materialize. So from my experience, now that it's maybe a good way to dig deeper into software, from my experience, the simplest way to think about software architecture, no matter the level of experience, is something like this. So software architecture is a set of characteristics combining both technical and business requirements at project and organization level, with which I will be able to define a structure that will help me build a performance, secure, and flexible system. So it is basically, in the most basic terms, a base structure upon which we build step by step, one component after another, creating relationships between them, and consider that all this is being realized while taking into consideration the whole picture of the system. And most of the time, as we will discuss later, that whole picture is not complete. So we have to be very careful about it. When talking about software architecture, or architecture actually in particular, we also have to draw some very specific lines. Probably there are many more than the ones that I listed here today, but I think it's enough for today, just to not make it more confusing. First of all, it's important to understand that each of them, actually, we need some different set of characteristics in order to actually distinguish. But what is common, it's the area of expertise. Because yeah, you can be intelligent and even born a leader, but it's it's nice to actually have the expertise to have failed before, to have seen how things are actually working in the real world and in real life systems, you know, learning from real situations and experimenting with different technologies. So let's start by going a bit into what actually application architecture is. Basically, it means that when I'm talking about application architecture, I'm looking inside the application and understand how it is built and why it is built like that. Maybe some decomposition of the components, understanding the value of the patterns that we have behind. And especially when we are talking patterns, we are talking about the ones that are behind the frameworks or libraries that we use. And we also just give a sneak peek on the code organization level, but very, very abstract, again, not going very much into details. Then we go to system architecture, where actually software systems, and when it comes to architecture of a system, it's actually like thinking about, okay, it is composed of multiple applications using a number of different technologies. So yeah, you can consider an end-to-end software system if it is to actually go very high level. So we are talking about the flows, the way all levels interact. Yeah, if we're talking about more levels. So application architecture tends to focus primarily on software, while system architecture is about understanding both software and hardware. Then we are going to discuss a bit about the one that we are going to go a bit more into deep today, which is the software architecture. And let's think about it as some sort of combination between the application and system architecture. So it's all about the concepts that relate to the design of a software system, from the structure of the code and understanding the whole software high level, inner workings, all of the processes until the deployment itself. And then we are going to two of them that are a bit more abstract, the enterprise architecture, which is more about operating at a high level. And this level, it's actually a strategic one, because it requires a higher level abstraction as more in strategy than in code. So it's a bit out of our scope today. And also the solution architecture, which is, again, a very higher level of abstraction. And as the definition states, is a practice of designing and managing the solution engineering in relationship with very specific business problems. So as I was saying, there might be a lot more types, but today we are going to focus on the system architecture, on the software architecture. And since we talked about all these types of architecture and somehow draw some line between them, I have to say that if the fundamentals of each are not really clear, and especially what makes them different is not, it's not very clearly stated, where it is very easy to actually confuse them. But more than this, it's easy to confuse very often the design with architecture. So often I encounter the confusion between, okay, software architecture and software design. And I think that, again, is because of the tendency that we have of always talking in so abstract, let's say, definitions and terms, and it becomes a bit hard to actually work with them correctly. So as already discussed, the architecture is a blueprint, is a structure that is defining actually some high-level units of our system. The way they interact, the way they work, the way they evolve in relationship to one another. Choosing the right or the wrong architectural pattern will actually determine the quality of our application, of our product, as in if it's reliable, if it's performant, maybe in terms of security. On the other hand, a system design shapes things more at code level, let's say. The way the components interact, the purpose of each element, some of the patterns that maybe we can use in certain cases. So having a strong system design helps the development team to be more efficient and organized, especially in terms of understanding what are the responsibility of each component and the relationships, as we were talking. And by identifying a system design, we can later decide, okay, what design patterns can I use in what context? And then I can see when, let's say we are discussing maybe the way we are using a framework, I can easier understand if that framework or library, it has compatibility with my application, if it actually enhances some of the good parts of what I'm building. Just a small thought again about good design, and also I'm doing again a parallel between buildings architecture. Good design is as little design as possible. Well, why this? It goes on the principle of less is more, but less is better, because it concentrates on the essentials aspects of the products, and they are not actually full of non-essentials. Yeah, that maybe sometimes can be a bit misleading in the process. Extending a bit the discussion about design and architecture, Ray Bach nicely talks about how, okay, architecture represents the significant decisions that shape a system. And how can you see actually what is significant is by measuring, okay, what is the cost of the changes that I might have to do in the future. So basically, significant decisions represent architecture. Everything else, it's about design. So later on, we will go a bit deeper into the decision making. But before that, simply said, okay, architecture is focused on the entire system, while software design focuses on a more specific level. Yeah, like components, modules, and so on. And precisely because we can change an architecture decision that quickly, or as I think Simon Brown was saying, that it's an architectural decision in the moment that you realize you can change it in an afternoon. Well, having this into mind, the first step in architecture software is about understanding what is significant and why. As let's say, if you think about a performance issue, yeah, that will be significant. If we are talking about maybe a slight difference in the number of lines, maybe that a certain, I don't know, method will have, that is not that impactful. Yeah, we can change that in an afternoon. So just stop for a second and give an eye on this, actually finding what is significant and defining why is it significant. And it's easy to think, and I've noticed this a lot in my years of being a developer. It's easy to think that actually if you write good code and you are following all the best practices and all the well-tested approaches, it's not important to actually keep an eye on architecture. Well, actually, there are some benefits in getting the whole picture, from understanding how the components might interact in my system to what are the main components and how exactly are they evolving in time, or what am I expecting from those components in terms of change and evolving. And then I will have to see, okay, also, what are the costs of what I'm choosing as in terms of technology, maybe, because I have to look a bit, okay, I know for sure that everything that I'm ever going to use has a cost, but it always also have benefits. And I also have to think about, okay, I have to choose the option that brings the smallest cost and a lot of benefits. And when I'm doing this, I have to also think, okay, is it saving me time or other resources? Is it actually helping me? Having an overview on the architectural dynamics helps answering a lot of questions like this. And also, a strong benefit is that ability of detecting change, as we are talking that it's an important factor. And when you talk about architecture, it's harder to actually make changes just like this. But I guess you know that, Darwin's theory says something like this, that the species that survives the longest is not the strongest, but the one that adapts better to change. Well, I really like to think that if Darwin would be a person working in software development, he would have stated something like this, that the system that survives is not the system that is the strongest, but the system that has an architect there that is actually able to predict and to adapt better to changes. So the best solution is to build an architecture that anticipates how things might change and how it might evolve. And this also, it's important to do it thinking again about the costs. So we were talking that, okay, if I write very good code and everything is just fine and I'm using all the best practices, I don't need a higher level. And we understood why, as developer, it's important to actually look at architecture and rise a bit above the editor that we are using daily. And often we encounter then this idea that actually, okay, you as a developer shouldn't worry about architectural details because your job is to code and you shouldn't be concerned about architecture. And I think it's such a wrong way to actually look at things, because there are so many benefits to having a look from above and knowing exactly at what you're working. And I will now give my perspective. In the moment that I actually became more curious about what is happening in the architecture, and I was trying to understand the whole system that I'm working on, even if I had only my little piece, well, I kind of stopped complaining about the same issues that were repeating. That doesn't mean that I forgot about the issues, but more like, okay, I try to find better solutions for those issues and see how can I work with them. How can I actually, in time, make them disappear, or at least not having them that intense as they were. So I was able to visualize components and interaction from a very high level. I changed my perspective through like day by day about my daily work, and I think that sometimes also for my colleagues, I created some sort of drive to actually look a bit beyond the components that we are building day by day and see exactly what are we working on, the whole system and the interactions in the system. And by doing this mindset switch, I was also able to quit some of the myths that I've grown to believe in time, such as, okay, software architecture is something inflexible and it's forever. And it's not my problem, it's an architect's problem. And architecture is not about coding, has nothing to do with this. So let's take from the beginning, because we talked about the architect, and we had some myth in there about if it should code, what's the thing with this architect anyway. So let's just take it, from the beginning, from the person that has the most control. I want to mention that independently of what we are about to discuss, or how often the role of an architect is pretty, let's say, hard to define, I think that it's more than just a promotion. And there is a strong need for evolution and expertise, as I was saying, especially in order to be able to resolve and work with the challenges and that might appear, and also make the just enough decisions, if we can say like this. So I really feel that indeed, in time, there's been an evolution when it comes to the mindset around an architecture role, from a traditional one to a more, let's say, hipster approach. So we are going to put them in balance and see exactly what approaches are the best and what exactly works better in some scenarios. So let's just go to the first one, which is an architect a role, a title? What is it exactly? So from the longest time, I had the idea that the architect is some developer that once arose from the big group of developers, and he climbed somewhere because he became so smart. He climbed somewhere in his abstract cloud, and he's not touching anything anymore. He's just being creative in there, and just sending directions from time to time. Now, excuse the irony, but as a junior in my first project ever, I remember that I never had the honor to actually meet the architect. And I've been a member of that team maybe 1 year and more than 1 year. So it was very strange. And when I switched to another project, I had the opportunity to actually have the architect by my side, like he was standing at the next desk. So I find how important it is to actually have that person so near to the team. So being an architect is not a title, it's a role, and is a flexible one. And what do I mean by that? Flexible role. Basically, the architecture is not only built by a person. We need to get away from this mindset that the architect architects the architecture. I'm not saying that teams shouldn't have someone that clearly owns the role, but somewhere in time, any member of the team can come with ideas or insights that can impact the current state of architecture. This is what I mean by a flexible role, collaboration more than ownership. And of course, the one and only that has the most experience, well, I'm thinking like he or she should own the whole stack, as in everything and every detail. That seems so wrong. It's an expectation that I don't think someone can ever meet, considering the speed with which the technology stack evolved in the last years. This means an enormous pressure on the person. Who would ever want to have a role like this, and who would ever actually be able to be good enough to fulfill such a role? Well, I haven't met that person yet, but the most realistic view that I have is to actually use the technical expertise of the team more than trying to own everything and know everything. And using the expertise of the team also helps the team grow. So taking part maybe in the process of development, and I'm not saying by writing code precisely, but maybe do some pair programming or just stay close to the team and see exactly what is happening. Because you will soon have the confidence of the team in order to receive feedback and see if actually the decisions that you've made as an architect are implementable in real cases, in real life scenarios, and by real developers that have problems, and all sorts of things are happening in their code and they have to research on Stack Overflow all day. So hard. So when we don't collaborate, we don't have enough information. And when we don't have enough information, well, we make assumptions, and we go again to that part with the decision and the changes. And actually, for clarifying those assumptions, the need of a team's input is very, very important. Then we are going to another, let's say, traditional thinking, that the architecture defines and guards the architecture. And I'm thinking it's like architecture police. So is the architecture something so fixed and hard to implement that it needs guarding? I don't think so. How about understanding the system and maybe combine this fact with collaboration and feedback and create a more grounded in reality system, a system that is understood by the team, and most importantly is to understand it in order to understand what the team is building for and to see the relevance. I was telling you about that first experience with no meeting an architect and then the switch. And yeah, it was actually empowering to have someone that has so much overview, so close to us and open to discussion. So going a bit more into depth and considering the myths that we've just invalidated, at least on when it comes to actually defining an architect and what it should do. Well, how about think a bit of some details that actually we somehow skip when it comes to the architecture role. And I would like now to look through two very important lenses. One is leadership that goes over management, and the other one has to do with knowledge, and it's about expertise over knowing it everything. If there is something that you remember maybe about this presentation, please make these two actually, because I think it's a very good starting point. So there's a difference between management and leadership. Management is about doing things and having some operation or some processes in order to get some things done. Leadership, on the other hand, it's more about people. It's less about what you're doing and more about how you're being. Yeah, so for our context, in the context of the team. So if you show up for your people and you take care of actually showing them your human side more than just, as I was joking, being a god and just being creative and that's it. Well, it will definitely change the team dynamics. Because I really think that someone that has a better overview can and has the responsibility to actually grow also the ones that are near. And in this case, actually, you get to build a team that considers and looks in the same direction, has the same vision. So even if we are chasing some deadlines, trying to check some metrics, deliver, sometimes we have to also look at the people. And I find it very interesting because we don't, or at least at a lot of the presentations that I join about architecture and architects and software architecture, we don't usually talk about the soft side of being an architect. We don't talk about the fact that an architect, it's a role that also has this leadership part. And besides the important technical decision, we have to also think about leading, giving the team a direction, explaining, coaching, just a set of soft skills that are very important and come with the part. The other one, the second idea that I was talking about before, it's related to knowledge. And it's this idea of, okay, the architect has to be an expert over everything. Well, if you ask me, I really think that an architect should come from a development background, because it's easier for him to understand, okay, what is happening in the code base and how the decision that it's making are actually impacting the daily work of the team. But here is a very interesting misunderstanding, because okay, everyone is expecting actually the architect to be also the best developer, which I don't think it's real. I really think that more it's important to actually, for an architecture to have this ability of just automatically change the context from, okay, looking from above and actually seeing what is happening at a higher level and just switch to to details also and understand what is happening also in there. So yes, as an architect in the team, you should have the best, let's say, or at least a very good perspective on approaches, best practices, overview and design and patterns, and bring also some value when it comes to, okay, let's just let the team give feedback and yeah, see exactly how and what we can implement with the ideas that I have. We need to create more trustful and yeah, an environment where people can collaborate and express their ideas and not push someone to have all the information and put so much pressure on a single role. So being an architect is challenging and takes a lot of knowledge and experience, and it has to check a lot of characteristics, yeah, from different parts. But yeah, you know how it is. It comes with the role. I find it important to note that you don't have to be a god in the technology stack in order to become an architect. I find it useful to have a very wide perspective on software development and some emotional intelligence, as we say, leadership skills. So we kept on talking about changes and how architecture is defined by the important changes that cannot be made in an afternoon. So as the business evolves, so it does the software. It's just a consequence. So sooner or later, depending on the context and the domain, what we need and what we maybe decided at some point might evolve a bit different than we've expected. And this is happening usually because of the fact that when those decisions are made, usually we don't have enough information. So maybe we can just observe the kind of changes that appear and in time determine a pattern. Also, do not rush into taking decisions. And I really like this concept of being very careful to what we are saying yes or no, because every time we assume a final decision, or we say, okay, this is the change that I have to do, or this is how it impacts, we are also saying no to some details that might appear in time. Details that will maybe help us make better and more informed decisions. So once we have committed to something, well, we kind of said, okay, this is how the time block in the future will be actually used. And we might realize in time that it was not the best solution. So saying no actually saves us a lot of time in the future, while saying yes actually costs a lot of time in the future. So just think about this the next time that you are doing you're making a decision, or you're thinking about a change and you're assuming it 100%. James Clear very nicely states that no is a form of time credit, while yes is a form of time debt. So invest wise in this part. So we've been talking about decisions that are extremely sensitive when it comes to architectural concerns, because those decisions have a huge impact. And when we are actually it's important to be aware of the importance of delaying making a decision, and try to push that moment to the limit in order to be sure that the time that you will have to invest later is not bigger than the one that you are just trying to get now. And then, okay, let's say that we're talking about decision at a higher level, but let's think a bit about the requirements, because also in here, we're talking about the business that is changing a lot, which influences the architecture, but also the requirements are an important aspect. And there will always be an ideal list that people would want. Most of the time it's not because maybe in the functional and business requirements, things might be clear, or maybe they will know better what they want. But when it comes to non-functional, where most of the time the requirements are something like, okay, I heard that performance is good, and I heard that security is good, so I want that also, and all sort of examples like this. So the holistic characteristics in here are somehow more self-explanatory, but most of the time there are requirements not very well understood. And yeah, it's really important to actually, as an architect, to see exactly if something that it's actually to see behind what the client or the user says that it needs, and more like give not what it wants, but what it needs. So if there are some of them that weight more, you as a specialist working in the domain and seeing exactly, having the experience to be able to see exactly what principle or what characteristic might weight more, then please research and understand, and then just try to receive also feedback on them and see if they are relevant from the higher details to the low-level code. So I would like to think about and point out actually the fact that being an architect is not something that you just become overnight. It is a role, and it needs a lot of expertise, and it means challenges, even though it seems like a nice road. It has a lot of challenges, and you have to be prepared for it. And there is this topic forever discussed, okay, should the architects code or not? Well, in my perspective, and again, from the experience that I had, you don't have to actually stay and take tasks from the board, but it's important to actually just keep connected to the team and do some pair programming from time to time, some knowledge sharing, actually take care of the team and the team's understanding of what you are trying to build. And always, again, I won't, I'll try to not repeat it, but it's important to actually get the expertise of the team and also the feedback, just to see how your decisions can impact or already have an impact in how the system is being implemented. Then at this point, you might be thinking, okay, so Mihaela, you're actually saying that if the team is somehow self-organizing, the role of an architect is not that important. No. Just because the team has good dynamics, let's say, for a while, doesn't mean that we don't need the ownership of one person over the architecture. Because, yeah, people come and go in teams, and the level of engagement is different from a team member to another. So I think it's important to have someone that can have an overview, that can, as we talked, give also a technical perspective, broad perspective, but also have that leadership flavor that keeps the team going. So I really think that it's important to understand two aspects. One is that that having actually an overview and engagement with the system architecture does not make you an architect. And the second one is that you have the fact that you have the role of an architect as person does not make you responsible from or actually does not put pressure on you on actually owning everything. And we should think about the fact that sometimes it's good to actually understand that the whole team is responsible for decisions if we're doing the process correctly and not only one person. So even though the process of becoming an architect is not very well defined, it can be actually taken over with small steps. And by small steps, I mean that, okay, we need to actually cross the line and stop staying in our places waiting for someone to give us direction, and yeah, just doing a 9 to 5 and just going home after that. If you're interested in actually growing as an architect or actually becoming an architect, I think it's important to ask yourself, okay, which are the people that can help me grow in this direction. If I have some ideas, to have the courage to actually challenge. And also for the architect, it's important to cross that line where, yeah, for a long time, maybe you thought that I'm an architect and yeah, I have to know it all and decide everything, and I'm so alone. An architect is part of the team, it's okay. So although we discussed a lot about best practices and ways of doing things, there are I think that also, or it still appears, this gap between the development team and the architect, unless that line is crossed and actually making an effort from both directions. Software developer is a team, development is a team activity, and in the end, even without any explicit intention, we help each other grow. So if it's something to leave you today, it's maybe for the developers out there that want to grow to be an architect. Don't be afraid of architecture. Don't see it as something very far away. Discuss and challenge some of the architectural decisions if you are sure about your arguments. Work on understanding, if not, work on understanding the whole picture, and ask always to be involved in the decisions, trying to understand what is actually happening at a higher level. For the architects, well, it's always a struggle, and I was saying that it's not very well defined actually, but maybe with little steps, like, okay, thinking, yeah, I'm not going to say again the same thing, but maybe just considering the team and understanding actually what do you want to achieve with the role might make a difference. And yeah, don't be afraid to actually get your hands a bit dirty and still write some code from time to time, or if not, doing pair programming or coding, because yeah, I understand that sometimes time is not enough. Maybe do some pair architecting. I really like this. I think Simon Brown also said something about this approach, that doing some pair architecting, as in just discuss with the team and see what is happening at a team dynamics level. And on a more personal note, the most interesting exercise that I did lately was to actually discuss with, while preparing for the presentation, discuss with a friend about buildings architecture, because she's a graduate, and she mentioned this concept of transpositioning, and actually the concept, it's saying that, okay, we have to release ourselves of the roles that we have, and actually be more open to give perspective from the point and the knowledge that we have, in order to actually create better products, and yeah, just put ourselves in each other places and try to understand how the system that we are working on can evolve. And with this idea in mind of sometimes switching roles and understanding what is happening, I would like to invite you to think globally and act locally when it comes to the architecture side, but in the developer's eye. And when it comes to architects, please, yeah, continue to do your globally activity, but do not forget to keep an eye on on the local things and on the low-level details. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mihaela. So what you're proposing here is that we should reconsider that thing called the Ivory Tower, right? Or am I? Okay, yeah. So what's the Ivory Tower? Just for...
So basically, with the Ivory Tower, what is behind is the fact that there is this misconception that when someone becomes an architect, okay, you have to just go away from the development side of things, and actually just, okay, looking at abstraction very much, discuss a lot about the requirements and the principles that actually grow the architecture, and never thinking again about the details and what is happening in the team. And I had this kind of experience, and yeah, it's not a successful one, so I wouldn't recommend it.
Doesn't it work like that? I mean, the architect just draws a blueprint and then gives it to the team. Now build my masterpiece.
Yeah, it's like giving to the team a blueprint, but the team is kind of blindfolded. So yeah, you implement this thing, because I think that I have such a big ego that I think that my architecture is so self-explanatory that I don't have to talk to you.
Yeah, plus it needs to be validated, and yeah, you need to get feedback from the implementation, and then the implementation gets feedback from the architecture. But then you also mentioned, I'd say, this developer to architect path, right? And I was just thinking, for instance, in cases where you have just a project with one team, and if somebody is a senior, or maybe not even that in a team, probably you already do a lot of things in the architectural space. Is that correct?
Yeah. As I was saying, indeed, sometimes the perspective or the idea is that, okay, the person that knows more is the one that should be in this role. But as you are saying, when we are talking about the person that has a senior level, let's say, or is the most has the most years as experience, it's also gaining some expertise, as I thinking that maybe, okay, it has some knowledge and also some maturity to do some decision, but that doesn't mean that that person precisely can have the role of an architect, because it takes more than this. As in, I can give you an example of let's say you have in a team of 2 juniors and maybe a media or something like this. That does not mean that the media will be a technical lead or an architect just because it has the most experience. But it is having such a low, not low level of experience, but yeah, being so young in this area makes it actually even more important to have someone that can give some guidance and have an overview and actually be sure that the project is starting very good and with a very strong basis.
Yeah, because like Dylan Beatty was saying yesterday, if something's hard to change, that's architecture.
Yep.
So then you need to start it right.
Super. I'm really eager to continue this conversation, maybe sometime soon, maybe like in one of the, hopefully, in-person events. Who knows?
Oh, waiting for one also. Having this kind of interaction only, it's somehow one-to-one because it's you and the camera. It's so, it's nice, but it's not the same.
It's an entire community out there. You just have
actually, I'm looking in the nearby, which is Palace. So I see a lot of people, and I just do a mind exercise. Right,
it's the community. We're doing the same imagination exercise. Otherwise, it's really strange to look at that camera and discuss with it. So yeah, we need real people.
All right. Thank you very much, Mihaela.
Thank you for having me.
We'll see each other again soon.